Welcome, everyone. I'm Todd O'Hare, President and CEO of the Montana Chamber of Commerce. To my left, it's Charles Robison, who is our illustrious Government Affairs Director and leading us through our efforts here in the legislative session. And you can't see her. She's off behind the curtain running the logistics is Sheridan Johnson, who's also helping us full-time here on the chamber staff through this government to this big legislative session
And beyond.
Yes. So it looks like everyone has logged in and can hear. Just a quick reminder that we're recording the first part of this, and we'll stop the recording and give our report, and then we can open it up for questions and answers. So if you have questions that you'd like to ask, you don't have to worry about it being recorded. So I'm just going to touch on a couple of bills that were of big priority to us last year. And as a brief reminder, we look at this legislative session through a lens that is driven by our strategic plan. And so we're keeping close eyes in particular on issues related to infrastructure investment, anything that can help improve the general business climate. We're also watching for things that affect the workforce or entrepreneurship. And so I will rattle off a few of these that we specifically engaged in last week. It's no means the full comprehensive list of all that activity we were involved with last week, but it's just some of the high points that we were involved with. Start out, Sheridan testified on House Bill 382, which is really a funding bill of sorts for career and technical student organizations. So when you think about like DECA and BPA and FFA, those all require a certain amount of funds in order to run those sort of organizations. And so Sheridan went in and supported that. We're big supporters of career and technical education. We think that there's a huge opportunity with our high school youth coming out of high school, whether they go on to a four-year university or a two-year college, or I have a son that is determined he's going to go right into the workforce right out of high school. And so we want to make sure that kids coming through high school have got the basic necessary work skills and the career technical skills that they need to go into the workplace, regardless of what their career path may take them after they graduate high school. So we were big supporters of that. We also were involved in some bills related to, these are some of the ones that we get involved with that that we come in opposition. A good example is there was a bill that would have, we called it ban the ban, would have banned local governments from saying you can't put in natural gas stoves or natural gas appliances in your building or you're in construction. And so we went in and we opposed that. We believe in all of the above sort of energy strategy and leaving those choices up to individuals. And so we went in and opposed that. And then we had two of our big tort reform bills that came up last week, and that took up a lot of oxygen out of our room. And again, these are bills that are kind of fit in the non-glamorous, not really exciting sort of bills, but they add up to create a general business climate. And anything that we can do that reduces litigation to businesses, reduces the threat of litigation so that you don't have to practice as much sort of preventative sort of litigation practices, anything that speeds up litigation so that it's done in a more timely fashion, are things that we're trying to advance during this legislative session. And so we had two of those bills that came through the session there last week. We had hearings on. So that's a kind of a quick high point from what we covered last week. And again, that's certainly not everything that was going on, but I just wanted to touch on a few of the high points from that. And Charles can touch based on some of the things that we're working on this week.
Thanks, Todd. I do want to highlight a couple of things, and then we've got a guest commentator today as well. But just real quickly, we brought our first bill that we initiated in the House today, House Bill 410, revising the time limit for service of process, and this is one of those kind of tinkering around the edges to those short plays to win overall. And this is just to ensure that lawsuits are brought before those claims get as stale to give people the opportunity to defend themselves. And then the governor's business equipment tax exemption is moving forward, and that's House Bill 212, and now it's over in the Senate tax, and we were in supporting that today. We also had one of our pretty significant tort reform bills heard this morning, and I think we have David Bell from ALPS on the line by phone. David is also the chairman of our Justice Coalition, and really provide the leadership to put this bill together. David, you were in the hearing today. Tell us what
Thank you, Charles. And yeah, I thought it was a productive hearing, and I'm sorry I can't be there with you in person. The Helena was beautiful. The roads between Missoula and Helena were not necessarily, so turning around on that journey. But yeah, I'm happy to give a brief description of the committee and the intent, if that's what you'd like.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, so this is the third-party litigation financing transparency bill, and as Todd alluded to, a lot of these tort reform bills can be pretty wonky and boring, but this one actually has found itself in the kind of some of the mainstream media. Just briefly, the American Tort Reform Association publishes its annual list of judicial hellholes, and this year Georgia was the inauspicious #1 ranked hellhole jurisdiction, and the first sentence of the summary as to the reasoning why noted the prevalence of third-party litigation financing in the Georgia judicial environment as the catalyst for that. And then, separately, there was a report by the U.S. Chamber Institute for Legal Reform that ranked the tort costs per person, and nationally it's about $3,600 a person, which is really staggering when you think about it. And Montana, adjusted for GDP, ranks 6th in the nation for the burden of tort costs on the citizenry and businesses. And the Wall Street Journal editorial board wrote an article about that. And certainly last but not least, 60 Minutes on December 18th, the 60 Minutes did a profile of the litigation financing activity. And in that really, I think, highlighted the problems that the bill that the Montana Chamber is advancing seeks to remedy, which is these financiers, which very often consists of hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, out of state, out of country money, and they'll often finance these litigation activities, but require extraordinary percentages of payment, oftentimes in excess of 50% of the money that's recovered. And just as troubling, they oftentimes will require settlement authority. And so that authority does not rest with the plaintiff or the plaintiff's attorney, but with the litigation financer. So what this bill seeks to do, and as the committee got underway, Senator Hertz was the bill sponsor, and then immediately after Charles got up for the Montana Chamber, and I think very professionally articulated the problem and the way that the bill seeks to solve that problem. And really, in brief, it does not prohibit the activity, but what it does do is require that litigation financiers who operate in our state register with the Montana Secretary of State office, just like you would if you were forming a business in the state of Montana, with some basic disclosures of who you are. It caps and contains the maximum amount that a litigation financer can charge, and it prohibits the financer from having settlement authority, and does some other elements of consumer protection activity. It is, at its essence, a consumer protection bill, though the other intent is to promote a legal environment in Montana that helps bring certainty to businesses. That say there were half a dozen proponents to the bill, and there were 2 opponents. The 2 opponents were the only 2 who testified remotely, and both of those individuals represented organizations that engage in some variation of litigation financing from either the consumer or commercial perspective. And so I thought there was what I would call some vibrant discussion from committee members asking questions of the various folks who testified, mostly in support of the bill. And it's impossible to know what will happen, but I think that the committee ended with the proponents of the bill feeling good about how the bill was explained and how the members of the Senate Business and Labor Committee were receiving and understanding the challenges that this bill that the Montana Chamber is advancing seeks to accomplish.
So I'd like to make two quick comments here. One, I want to thank you, David. David and Alps are one of the Montana Chamber's longtime members and leads a lot of these sort of efforts with us. And we couldn't do this without you and helping us identify some of these sort of challenges that exist today and some of the challenges that may be emerging. And so thank you, David, for your leadership and on behalf of the business community and identifying some of these pinch points and more importantly, identifying solutions to some of these pinch points. And the second thing is that, I allude to here with David in this leadership role, working with us, is that I think this bill is a bit of a leadership bill nationally, as we're trying to address this thing that we see sweeping across the country. And if we can get this bill signed by the governor through the legislative process and signed by the governor, I think that Montana will be in a real leadership role when it comes to this sort of thing. And so thank you again, David, and all the supporters we had for this. It puts us in a real strong position on behalf of the business community.
Yeah. I want to thank also Dan Brooks from the Billings Chamber who came on and joined testimony. It's great to have local chambers of commerce weighing in. They have a lot of influence with legislators. And just want to highlight one or two other bills, Todd. This afternoon, there's a resolution against removal of the Snake River dams. You'd think low cost, incredibly reliable, and zero pollution hydroelectric power would be a no-brainer. But there is an active movement involving United States senators in the states of Washington and Oregon and the governors of those states to remove these federal dams. And so we're the Montana Electric Cooperatives Association, supported by the Chamber and a lot of others, is asking the legislature to pass a resolution supporting those dams and calling on Congress to keep them in place and keep the juice flowing. Just a few weeks ago, Western Montana relied real heavily on that hydropower, and we keep it going. We're also this afternoon we'll be in supporting the governor's debt-free in 23 proposal to pay off most or nearly all state indebtedness right now, and that'll free up $20-some million just in from interest payments that'll be available for other legislative priorities in future years, and also sets another bill sets aside some of the state surplus to match federal highway funding to be able to take on more projects in Montana. So
another great infrastructure example.
Yeah.
Right?
And we're and I think the last piece, a little small or kind of a back corner of the law books, is our tax haven statute. It's kind of an outdated bill that a number of countries identified as tax havens, but the list hasn't been updated. Montana is really one of the only states that still has this special tax provision. And again, we're just looking to make the state of Montana a more friendly place for business investment. So we'll be working with Senator Daniel Zolnikov to repeal our outdated tax havens bill as well.
So I think that brings us up to today anyway, and we're rapidly coming up on the halfway point, transmittal date, which is March 1st, and that puts us halfway through the session officially, right? And that March 1 is an important date because there are a lot of different deadlines that are associated with that certain bills can't be requested after that date, and certain bills that have not crossed over from one chamber to the other, if they've not done by that time, are effectively dead. So it seemed like a slog in the beginning, and we're grinding through it, and we are breathing down the neck of the halfway point right now.